Guys, since you may be watching this solo, if you haven't watched any of the previous ones talking about the complementarian views on women and men, I would take a peek at that. I'm going to give you a very brief overview so that you have an understanding of what I'm talking about in Romans 5. Complementarians believe the husband and father and the man are always an authority over women. That husband's authority over the wife, men are authority over women in the church, and that men have greater authority and responsibility and leadership, and they're made that way, and that's just God's plan for mankind, and it's been that way from the beginning. It was that way in the garden, and so that's a complementarian view. And so what I've been doing is just talking about the different ways that I think that there's a lot of holes in that. Not negating men's roles or desires or natural leadership skills, but I do think that when we talk about authority and leadership, we actually need to understand what the word is saying. The Spirit has just been really driving this in me. Like, if I didn't say it, I didn't say it. Okay, so I'm like, okay, Lord, if you tell me if you said it, then I'll believe it, not just because it's a tradition, not because of that. And so what we see are a couple of quick things that address this issue. Number one, in the Garden of Eden, which is what our focus is on. Number one, authority was given to both men and women in Genesis 1:26-28. It was not given just to Adam. Number two is that Adam was given a special privilege, by naming all the animals and doing all that stuff because he was alone. And he was looking for a suitable helper. He expressed that need to God, and he looked around, he named all the animals, and you know what, this isn't working for me. And so God created him a suitable helper. And the word suitable means equal, complementary. It doesn't have any concept of beneath or below. And then the helper actually means somebody who's bringing something to the table that you don't have naturally on your own. So I think that that's really an important thing to grab onto. Now, the other aspect of this is that Romans chapter 5, which is the focus of this, okay, that was your little 2-minute review. Now, the focus of Romans chapter 5 is saying that death came through Adam and life came through Christ. And so what we equate now is that because Paul is using a literary device called biblical typology, which is actually historical typology, which means that he's taken a biblical figure from the Old Testament and he's applying it to Christ. This is not quite a good form or was similar and had similar attributes and something, but then the antitype, the opposite, or the better version in the New Testament, of course, is Jesus. And so we see that Adam is a type, and then Jesus is the antitype of that. So we see that through Adam, death came, which is the concept of 12-21. But Jesus, through one man, Jesus, one man, death, Adam, one man, Jesus, that life came through Christ. So this is the concept then of what we do. We take biblical typology or historical typology and we say, okay, because Paul is using Adam as an example for the fullness of Christ, that he can relate to the Old Testament, to speaking to a Roman audience, so that they could have a really clear understanding of history, of all of mankind, and they can grab onto this. So he's explaining this to them. So the interesting thing is that we've now taken Paul's example of Adam and we say, well, because he doesn't mention Eve, Adam was solely responsible for it. The problem with that is that when we look at the Genesis 1, 2, and 3, we don't see that Eve was not responsible. We don't see that Eve didn't bear authority in the issue. Because when you have authority, you have responsibility. I've always equated that with keys. You know, if you have a key, it's because you have a responsibility. If you have a key, it's a responsibility. You can open something, you can lock something. You have a key, you're responsible. If you misuse that key, you leave it unlocked or something happens to it, and you own that key, you're responsible for whether or not you did what was right with that thing. Okay, very simple concept. But Eve was responsible. How do we know? She had consequences. She took ownership of her sin. She dealt directly with God on the issue, not through Adam. Okay, so being that that's the case, we can't really say that because Paul's using a type to get a point across about Jesus, that suddenly Eve wasn't responsible or didn't have any authority in the issue. She did. She did. And I think the Bible really bears that out. So there's a lot there, but that's just a real brief overview of Romans chapter 5, 12-21, and that concept of Adam having authority over Eve based on the fall. Okay, so there's that. And ask your questions. Okay, I want to dig it out. I'm really enjoying this, and I feel like this is a season for this information to come to the front. All right, bless you.